Right now, beneath the swamps of Louisiana, something is happening that will split America in two if nobody stops it. The Mississippi River is seconds away from switching course. Geologically speaking, seconds. Not tomorrow. Not in your lifetime necessarily. But on a scale that geology recognizes, the moment is imminent. It sounds impossible. It sounds like science fiction. But it's the most dangerous secret the Army Corps of Engineers has ever kept. And when it finally happens, it will cost the United States somewhere between $300 million and $1 trillion in a single month. It will disrupt global food supplies. It will cripple America's energy infrastructure. It will displace millions of people. Let me back up. To understand how a river can threaten to tear the country apart, you need to know what the Mississippi actually is. It is not just water moving through a landscape. It is the beating heart of American commerce, agriculture, and energy. 20 million tons of cargo travel down this river every single year. 60% of all American grain exports ride barges past New Orleans and out to the world. Oil, petrochemicals, iron ore, steel, every single commodity that makes modern America function flows down this water highway. And right now, beneath all of it, the river is plotting to go somewhere else entirely. In 1951, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers made a terrifying discovery. By analyzing sediment patterns and river flow over centuries of recorded data, they realized the Mississippi was in the process of abandoning its current course. The river had captured roughly 30% of its own flow and was pushing it toward the Atchafalaya River, a steeper, shorter path to the Gulf of Mexico. The Atchafalaya cuts directly south through Louisiana, dropping elevation faster, moving water quicker, offering the Mississippi an escape route from its labor. At the rate the Mississippi was abandoning itself, the Corps calculated that by 1990, the river would complete its total diversion. The entire main channel would shift. New Orleans would become a dead river town. Baton Rouge would lose its water supply. The Mississippi River as America knows it would cease to exist. 40 years. That was the deadline. The Corps had less than 40 years to prevent the impossible from happening. Here's where the story gets truly insane. They decided to do it by building a dam in the middle of the river's suicide mission. Not to stop the river entirely, but to split it. To force the flow to obey human commands. July of 1963 marked the completion of what became known as the Old River Control Structure. It was not a simple dam. It was a collection of massive concrete gates and channels positioned exactly at the point where the Mississippi River was trying to redirect itself into the Atchafalaya. The structure cost millions and took years to design. Engineers had to thread a needle through Louisiana's murky waters, holding back the force of a river that has carved continental geography. The project was considered one of the most ambitious engineering feats of the 20th century. The low-sill structure, the auxiliary structure, and a main control structure together formed humanity's most expensive insurance policy against nature. The gates were designed to hold back the pressure of the Mississippi River in flood, and the channels were engineered to split the river's flow, keeping roughly 70% heading toward New Orleans and forcing 30% to remain diverted away from the critical channel. It was control on a scale the world had never attempted before. And then, everything nearly went wrong. April 1973. The Mississippi River flooded higher than anyone had predicted. The river's volume turned apocalyptic. Water pressure on the old river control structure reached levels the engineers had considered theoretical, levels that should not have been possible in a once-in-a-hundred-year flood. On April 14th, a foreman walked out on the low-sill structure and saw something that made his blood run cold. A 67-foot-long section of the intake channel had simply collapsed. Not cracked, not damaged. Collapsed. Chunks of concrete the size of cars had been ripped away by the river's force. The steel pilings holding the foundation were exposed, scoured clean by the river's fury, Their protective concrete covering simply eroded away. The structure was not failing. It was failing right now. In that moment, if the low sill had given way completely, the Mississippi would have finished its 1951 plan. It would have diverted into the Atchafalaya. The entire economic infrastructure of North America would have collapsed within weeks. America would have watched its greatest engineering project lose its war against nature. Engineers raced to pour emergency concrete into the holes beneath the structure. They essentially performed battlefield surgery on a dam while a flood was trying to kill it. The low sill survived, but it never recovered. The 1973 flood permanently weakened it. From that day forward, it could only handle 60% of the flow it had before. The structure was now compromised, running on half power, trying to hold back a river that was constantly testing its resolve. One reporter who understood the true weight of what happened was John McPhee. In 1987, he wrote a famous investigation for The New Yorker called Atchafalaya. McPhee had ridden the Mississippi on a towboat with the Army Corps engineers, watching them patrol their fragile creation. He spent months traveling down the river, documenting the anxiety of engineers who knew exactly how close they had come to disaster. He understood something the American public did not. The dam holding back the river's diversion was not actually strong enough to do its job permanently. It was held together by constant maintenance, constant vigilance, and a prayer that the next big flood would not arrive before repairs were finished. McPhee's reporting made it clear that the old river control structure was not a permanent solution. It was a band-aid on a wound that refuses to heal. It was a band-aid on a continental rift. The Corps engineers themselves admitted that their solution was temporary. That was in 1987. We are still here, still using that temporary solution, still hoping the dam holds. Since 1973, the situation has actually gotten worse, not better. Sediment has been accumulating in the channel faster than anyone expected. The river deposits millions of tons of sand and mud each year, and that sediment is creating a dam of its own, raising water levels and increasing pressure on the control structure. Climate change has begun making floods bigger and more frequent. The Army Corps of Engineers has spent over $1 billion a year maintaining the entire Mississippi River system, with the entire lower Mississippi River system representing one of the most expensive engineering maintenance operations in the world. The old river control structure alone requires constant attention, constant dredging, constant repair. In 2024, the Corps finally dewatered the structure for the first time since 1987 to inspect it thoroughly. This was a $34.2 million operation that took months. What they found was clear evidence of accelerating deterioration. Subsurface foundations were compromised. The concrete was failing in multiple locations. The pilings that anchor the structure to the riverbed were showing signs of stress. The structure that stands between America and economic collapse is slowly coming apart. Here is what happens if the old river control structure fails. Within hours, the Mississippi's entire 30% flow would redirect into the Atchafalaya. Within days, sediment and debris would choke the old Mississippi Channel between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Navigation would become impossible. Every cargo ship trying to reach the port of New Orleans would have nowhere to go. The grain industry would freeze. Oil shipments would halt. Gas pipelines would be severed. The port of New Orleans alone handles more cargo than any single city in the Western Hemisphere except Tokyo. Losing even 1 week of navigation cost the American economy roughly $300 million. An extended closure would cost tens of billions. But here is the terrifying part. Multiple major oil and natural gas pipelines cross the Atchafalaya River. If the Mississippi suddenly carves a new path downriver, those pipelines would be destroyed. Louisiana generates 75% of its electricity from natural gas. A pipeline collapse would trigger immediate power blackouts across the entire Gulf South. Hospitals would switch to emergency generators. The already damaged water system would fail completely. But the economic damage is almost not the worst part. When the Mississippi redirects, New Orleans loses its fresh water supply. The city depends on the river. Desalination plants would take years to build. Bottled water would need to be trucked in for months. But here's where it gets apocalyptic. Salt water from the Gulf of Mexico would begin pushing inland. 230 miles up the old Mississippi Channel, salt water would reach Baton Rouge. The freshwater aquifers that supply the region would be contaminated. 3 million people across South Louisiana would lose their primary water source. Hospitals would close. Industry would shut down. The region would become economically uninhabitable for months or possibly years. And this is exactly where the problem lives. The Army Corps of Engineers knows all of this. They have known for 70 years that the Mississippi is trying to leave. They have known since 1973 that the solution is failing. Every senior officer in the Corps understands that at some point, the old river control structure will fail. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when. The engineers have contingency plans. They have studied what the recovery would look like. They have run scenarios. But the American public has no idea that beneath Louisiana, the most critical piece of American infrastructure is losing a silent war against gravity and geology. The truth is that a solution exists. The United States could invest in a new, upgraded control structure. Engineers have designed it. Cost estimates range from $10 to $15 billion. That sounds like an enormous sum until you remember that a single week of Mississippi River closure costs $300 million. A month-long closure would cost roughly $1.5 trillion to the American economy. The mathematics of waiting are nightmarish. The longer we delay, the worse the outcome becomes. But Congress has never allocated the funds. Every year, the Army Corps submits reports showing the deteriorating condition. Every year, they request funding for a permanent solution. Every year, the money goes to somewhere else. Meanwhile, the river keeps pushing. The sediment keeps accumulating. The floods keep getting bigger. And the old river control structure keeps slowly breaking. It is a slow-motion disaster playing out in real time while nobody is watching. The Mississippi River was not always contained. For thousands of years, it shifted course naturally, building and abandoning deltas, carving new channels, following the geology. The Atchafalaya was one of these old paths. Nature's plan was always for the river to find a steeper route eventually. Humans stepped in and said no. We said that the river would stay where we wanted it, that engineering could overpower geology, that we could hold back the planet itself. And for 60 years, we were right. The low structure held. The gates closed. The river stayed in place. But nature does not negotiate, and gravity never stops pushing. The stakes of this story extend beyond economics or water supply. They extend to the question of what happens when human engineering meets the deepest laws of planetary physics. The old river control structure represents one of the most ambitious attempts in human history to override a natural process. It is also one of the most fragile. 6 decades of constant effort, constant funding, constant crisis management, just to keep a river from following the path that geology tells it to take. And despite all of that effort, despite everything the Army Corps can do, the outcome is still almost certain. The Mississippi will eventually return to the Atchafalaya. If that blew your mind, every subscriber is automatically entered in our monthly giveaway for a branded hoodie. Details are in the description. When that moment comes, it will happen catastrophically. It will not be a gradual process. The moment the control structure finally fails, whether in a major flood or a structural collapse or both, the Mississippi will move. It will move fast. That is not speculation. That is physics. The moment the gates give way, 30% of the river's flow will become 60%, then 80%, then 100%. The transition might take months, But once the river starts flowing down the Atchafalaya, reversing it will be nearly impossible. The old channel will fill with sediment. Navigation will be impossible. The ports will be worthless. 3 million people will be without fresh water. The global food supply will be disrupted. American grain shipments will halt. Prices will spike globally. People will go hungry in countries that depend on American food exports. The energy industry will be crippled. Hospitals will lose power in the darkness. And the United States will be forced to pump tens of billions into emergency recovery while watching one of the greatest engineering projects in history finally lose its battle against nature. The Army Corps of Engineers knows this is coming. The reports sit on desks in New Orleans and Washington. The engineers understand the timeline. They understand that every year of delay makes the structure more vulnerable, makes a failure more likely, makes the consequences more severe. What they are essentially waiting for is permission. Permission to spend the $10 to $15 billion that prevention would cost. But that permission has never come. Instead, there is just the waiting, the maintenance, the inspections, the repairs that buy time but never solve the problem, the slow accumulation of damage, the certain knowledge that one day the dam will give way and America will be split in two. The catastrophe is not coming suddenly from nowhere. It is being built, piece by piece, year by year, in the slowly weakening concrete that holds back the Mississippi. The Mississippi River represents a threshold in human civilization. We believed we had conquered nature. We believed we could hold back rivers, dam floods, control geology with steel and concrete and engineering. The old river control structure is the monument to that belief. It is also becoming the monument to its failure. Beneath the swamps of Louisiana, the river is still pushing. It is still finding its path. And the gates that we built to stop it are slowly coming apart. The question is no longer whether the Mississippi will change course. The question is when. Will it happen in the next major flood? In 10 years? In 50? We do not know. The Army Corps does not know. Nobody knows. All anyone can be certain of is that it will happen. The dam will fail. The river will flow where it geologically needs to flow. And when that happens, America will face a crisis more serious than almost any nation has faced in modern history. And if stories like this remind you that the unexpected can arrive without warning, that the fragile systems holding America together are sometimes just concrete and willpower, grab your free disaster preparedness toolkit. The link is in the description. Because when you understand the fragility of the systems that hold civilization together, you realize that preparation is not paranoia. It is sanity. It is wisdom. The Mississippi will flow where it wants to flow. All we can do is choose how ready we are when it does.